Nothing is a worse sign of a game's ultimate future to me than the announcement of a brand new title followed by years of relative silence. Like, I can't be the only one here that thinks to myself, why bother announcing a video game? Why bother building hype for your video game than letting it all slowly dissipate until it fades into obscurity? This has happened repeatedly and admittedly far too often in the MMO space, and rarely does it result in a largely successful launch. But there have been rare exceptions where this hasn't held true. So maybe Zenonia Chronobreak, the MMO that we're talking about today, will be different. Or maybe that's just me chugging a whole lot of copium. Zenonia Chronobreak is an MMORPG that was announced back in 2020, yet went largely overlooked. The Zenonia intellectual property is relatively well known around the world as a single-player RPG, with Chronobreak marking the franchise's first attempt at a massively multiplayer title. Chronobreak will be disconnected from the overall series due to its MMO exclusivity, much like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft from the mainstream Final Fantasy or Warcraft franchises respectively, and is set within the world of Zenonia, meaning players will likely recognize a variety of different locales, perhaps characters you encounter across the various RPGs that exist, and likely classes, gear, various different abilities. But we'll go ahead and touch on that in a moment, because first, I want to shout out all of our incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys allow for me to continue to push out regular videos like this every single day, and I cannot stress or express how grateful I am for you. Also, if you have a moment, come follow me over on Twitch. I'm actually streaming a brand new Steam Anime MMO there today at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and MRSSTIX and I stream there every single weekend, and we'd love to see your faces. Zenonia Chronobreak revealed earlier this month a 56-second teaser showcasing the series' evolution and growth over time, which is actually what you're watching in the background right now. Very little was shown, but I have managed to find a couple different official images online that bear a strong resemblance, interestingly enough, to MMOs like Pyria Chronicles and Project BBQ, both anime MMOs that were developed in Korea that were ultimately cancelled in the last couple years. Yet at the same time, this game looks to be a drastic departure from the sprite-based graphical style that the Zenonia franchise has become known for ever since its inception. And while vague, we do have some information pertaining to the game that I'm going to go over here and share with you. On the one hand, according to an article over on MMO Culture that I read a couple weeks ago, Chronobreak actually refers to the possibilities of the game's adventures connecting to previous Zenonia titles spanning multiple instances of space and time. This means that there may be parts of the RPG that are touched upon, referenced, or even visited over the course of the MMO due to the inclusion of more of a multiverse type setting. Zenonia Chronobreak, originally known as World of Zenonia when it was announced 3 years ago, is an MMORPG featuring an extensive storyline said to encompass the entirety of the Zenonia series. Narrative-driven MMOs are difficult to come by, and even fewer of them have quality stories that are worth telling. Final Fantasy XIV, Star Wars The Old Republic, Guild Wars 2, they're the 3 MMOs that immediately stand out in terms of narrative depth. With Chronobreak, however, we're not talking a standalone adaptation. We're talking an adaptation that includes story, that includes characters, that includes entire plots from previous incarnations, meaning it very well may hold more significant meaning for players that have played previous installments of the franchise. Chronobreak is an anime MMORPG, my favorite subgenre of the entire MMO genre, if I'm being honest. But it features fully 3D graphics, similar to the upcoming Dragon Sword title, which I'd also have a video on if you're interested, with cartoon rendering, realistic backgrounds, and a dynamic camera view. In total, the Zenonia franchise has seen over 63 million players, an achievement very few RPG series ever achieve, so the Zenonia intellectual property is quite large and has a lot of potential content to adapt, along with what is likely to be an enormous potential player base. This iteration of Zenonia will feature a brand new, improved non-targeting combat system inherited from the Zenonia action RPG, meaning it will feature full action combat. Whether it's something like Soul Worker, PSO2 New Genesis, or Black Desert is entirely speculative though. It could be more akin to something like Genshin Impact or Tower of Fantasy, nobody really knows. There will be functional massive cross-server PvP battles present in game akin to what is found in Guild Wars 2, although likely to a smaller degree However, I know a lot of you aren't necessarily fans of PvP. Whenever I cover a PvP MMO, I always see comments labeling PvP as something that the majority of you just genuinely dislike. And I know PvP MMOs that feature PvP as a focal point, are generally poorly received amongst the MMO community and also do very poorly in terms of player retention because, and I understand there's nothing worse than getting ganked out in the world when you're a single player playing by yourself by either a significantly higher leveled, better geared player or a group of players that are out together hunting out players like you, like me, that like to play solo. With this in mind, these PvP battles, these cross-server engagements are not going to be mandatory in any way for those of you that, once again, are not overly fond of PvP. According to the studio, during internal testing, Chronobreak received great reviews. However, I'm going to be real with you guys here. That is a very easy claim to make, and that is relatively impossible to verify, as reviews can be fabricated or altered with relative ease. Or, since the testing was done internally, the reviews could be very skewed. Zenonia Chronobreak is being developed and published by Com2Us and Gameville. Com2Us is fairly vilified in the gaming world as they have pushed out some pretty nasty NFT and blockchain games in recent memory, but the Zenonia franchise has yet to my knowledge, ever include any in their titles. And while that could potentially change in the future, and I'm immediately thinking Ni no Kuni Crossworlds here, I have yet to see any direct confirmation that Com2Us would litter Chronobreak with it. This is honestly the root of my concern for the game. I know there are some NFT and blockchain white knights out there, but I personally dislike when MMOs implement it in their games, because every single one of them have been trash and have failed almost immediately upon release. And if Chronobreak includes it, we'll likely follow the same fate. Otherwise, we'll likely be capable of playing Zenonia Chronobreak in the next few months. Com2Us stated that the game is going to be releasing in the second quarter of 2023. This means around April through June. They're planning on holding a closed beta in the near future, so we're gonna need to keep an eye on that. And you know, I will be the first and perhaps the only content creator covering the beta or the game. Well, at least at the time of recording this video. I'm sure as a byproduct of me releasing this video, there are going to be other people that go ahead and start covering it too, which is good because this game, I think, deserves more attention. And the more attention games get, the more potential they have to be better, or at least for the devs to listen to the concerns of the player base. I'm always excited for new MMOs, and more than that, I'm always excited for new anime MMOs and anime games in general. So this game is ultimately very exciting for me. It's right up my alley, and I'm genuinely curious to see what happens with it. Now, if Zenonia Chronobreak isn't your thing, no problem. I got you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now. One featuring a list of every MMO releasing this month, the other featuring an MMO launching in just a few months that I have had, or MMSSTIX rather, had a lot of fun in.